So for the most part, the streets are empty. People are respecting, again, for the most part, the lockdown. Then again, today's Saturday. We're going to the supermarket, which is one of the 5 reasons why they allow us to go out. And I want you to look at these streets because I'm going to talk to you about the relationship between the space, the physical space, which is a presentation that in one of my classes in identity and difference, we discuss something that one interview actually done to Michel Foucault, which turns out is a French philosopher and important intellectual, associated normally with postmodernism. So we definitely want to talk about that. And when it comes to my intercultural communication class, this is interesting too, because we definitely will touch in the impact. In what we will eventually define as culture, right? And the physical space is a very important aspect of it. You can see that houses, of course, do not look like anything we know in the States, actually in the Americas in general. And that's just because, many of these buildings, not these ones in particular, but well, actually this one here too, they belong to centuries ago. The house that I'm living in right now is from the 17th century, if I believe, or 17th century. It's pretty old, and the way they're built, you can tell them is, you got to think about it, and you can probably already imagine how physical space determines many things, our behaviors, and in terms to also some of our beliefs. And so I can give you an example. Most of my classes I start with some weird questions, at least in the beginning they seem weird, and one of them is trying to ask from my students what is the size of your guys' refrigerators in the States. And they're huge, and that means that your house must be big enough to have the refrigerator in a kitchen that is big enough, and that means that you probably have a big car that allows you to carry largest amount of food when you're not working, which is pretty much all the time. You're always working in the States. So how is that? How does that relate to some of our beliefs, the way we see ourselves, the way we perceive space, relationships, and so on. Anyway, so living in close proximity and being able to walk, that's important. Let me repeat it: living in close proximity, intersecting with people on a daily basis. When you live in these streets, it's just what happens, right? You run into people, you are close to people, which, by the way, makes the lockdown very significant to places like here. Look at that piece of art. That's street art, which is very important in Europe, and particularly in France. There's a bike, half of a bike stuck there on the wall. Anyway, so that's the first part of this video. We'll see, and I'm probably going to do the rest on a couple of places, including the supermarket, if they allow me. See you soon. So I was mentioning in the previous video, one of the presentations, one of the articles I gave you guys to my identity classes is Michel Foucault, an intellectual that you guys will talk about, and he actually discusses how, at the end of the document, how just moving in the fire, and which is the source of like preparing foods and keeping your house heated, for him became a very important change in social dynamics, which is true. You can imagine people gathering around the fire and so on and staying in, which reminds me a little bit of the lockdown. And I'm here, this is a park here in downtown Montpellier, where you bring your kids, and this is another example too. This is pre-open, and you bring your kids, everybody does, and this is another moment and place of intersection for people that lives here, and of course that includes us. We have 2 kids, Minnie, Max, and Elena. And since they were born, basically, that we will bring them here. And something interesting that happens, and we notice that immediately, this is for my intercultural communication class too, is that the whole saying about that it takes a village to raise a kid, actually here is absolutely true, and something that we'll never accept in the States. Here, the entire, everybody pretty much is allowed and even expected to correct kids' behavior, other kids' behavior. So, and that includes sometimes, even grabbing them, touching them. I'm not talking about violence. I'm just talking about the fact that if you're there, it happened to us, and we also did it as well once we understood the rules, the cultural rules. If a kid is doing something that's not safe, let's say pushing another kid from high, it is expected from anybody around, whoever is closer, other adults, to actually intervene. Even if it's not your kids, even if you don't have kids, and that's okay, and the parents accept it, and there's a reason for that. And again, we will talk about it too. This has a lot to do with high context, low context, using Hall's concepts. We are going to learn about that. Is that there's a shared understanding of what it means to raise a kid, and what is an appropriate behavior and non-appropriate behavior, which in the States, rather low context culture, using the same terminology, very individualistic too, I guess. We just have a different approach to this, and we believe that individuals, parents, we all have a divine choice, and well, that actually, even you can relate it to what's happening right now, the fact that it's really hard for Americans to take I guess, to reach a consensus and to accept that maybe there's specialists, people that know more than us, right? In this case would be scientists and so on, and follow these directions, and trust, by the way, trust, that's the hardest thing to do. So that may explain, the recent demonstrations in Michigan and other places later on, demanding opening the economy, right? Instead of actually just somehow accepting the fact that specialists, that there is a canon, and there is a way to evaluate what's better, what's the safest, and so on. That's a very interesting thing, and we may be paying a big price for that. We will find out later, though. Anyway, let's continue, and we'll see you. It's me, Max, and Elena following me, my bloggers. Anyway, there's some food for thought, and next one should be, if I'm allowed, from the supermarket. And then we can see if we can find some toilet paper. Yeah, there is toilet paper in France. So I had to show you this. This is the Place de la Comedie, which is definitely the heart of downtown. And I wanted to show it to you, how empty it is. There are some people, nevertheless. And, well, they're going to supermarkets, and you can see their public transportation. That's the tram, which is pretty much in every city here in France, and for the most part in Europe. For those who have been in Europe, of course, you recognize that public transportation is a very important part of social life here, and determines also, like everything else, the way we live, and again, our values. And do we really need a car? And actually, living here in Montpellier in France for the last 10 years, I didn't have a car. I rent a car anytime I needed it, and sometimes was like even twice a day. There's a different system, kind of like the Zip car, but better, I would say, and it works fine. And that's so, do you need a car? I don't know. You need a car in the States, but it's kind of like we'll talk about it, because you need a car because we made it necessary, but it's just an ideological construct, I guess. Anyway, so the difference here in the supermarket is that for the most part, there's a lot of stuff missing, and definitely not missing wine, though. Right, they have regulated the amount of stuff that you can buy per person. You cannot hoard, and that allows for the most stuff to be available, as you can see. And that includes items that apparently, well, when I left the States, hand sanitizer, which is available now. Small quantities, but you can find it, and the same thing with the toilet paper. Actually, it's never been a problem to find toilet paper. So yeah, for the most part, you can see stuff is here. Yep. Nope. My wife is asking me if I should with the toys. So right. Anyway, I really want to show you the paperwork. You can see right there again. I'm gonna go there because we need some stuff to get from there. But anyway, things have been fairly okay. Good beer too. As you can see, If you guys need me to send you some toilet paper, let me know. I will do my best. It will be very expensive though.